Okay, before the break, we were going over all sorts of terms and stuff, but um, now I guess it's back to the tools, and in a couple weeks we'll have another one of those from the next few chapters in the book and things like that. Actually, the next one's over the next 3 chapters, and then we've got some paperwork talking about to do at points too. But last week we ran out of time on Blender, kind of gone long, and we didn't get to 3D modeling. That's probably the one we want to do. Even if you're doing a 2D game, it can actually be easier to make 3D graphics and then just take like a picture of them. Try to get that out of the way. So we started looking at Blender. The biggest thing, this is like the game engine we're gonna get to next week. The biggest thing is just not panic when you see all these buttons. And we don't even really see all of them. They're more dynamic. We want to choose a general thing because this is what Blender was mainly made for. So we'll choose a new general. And I'm going to get rid of that starting stuff. So I'm going to push A to select all and then delete that stuff. So I have that big blank space. Remember, clicking your middle mouse wheel orbits around. Scrolling the middle mouse wheel zooms in and out. And if you hold shift and click the middle mouse wheel, that's where you pan left and right and up and down. Give me a lot of changing views, things like that. Yeah, this isn't even all the buttons. There's this little thing here hides a bunch of buttons. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and we're not even seeing all of it.
I didn't even notice that little arrow.
Huh. And up here in the corner, this one gives us another screen. Oh,
how did you pull that little
options?
That's not what I meant to pull. Is there my mouse that's sticking out? So I'll be back in 2 seconds. I'm going to move my office and drop a mouse pad because that was. Okay, sorry. I was trying to use this old tattered folder that's been through at least 4 times to teach in this class, and it's not working very well. But I have a brand new, really nice mouse pad. So I grabbed the corner here. See how the corners are curved? If you grab outside of the edge, then you can drag stuff around. So I can move that way over.
Yeah, that's. But that little arrow that you popped out next to the directional axes.
Mm-hmm.
How would you pop that out? Because I can't actually get my mouse to select
that. Let's click it and drag it. I usually have CAD stuff going on here too. The question came up the other day about AutoCAD. We have to turn that on. So the parametric entry, the buttons show up here.
But there must be some sort of setting or something. Because if I try to drag out there, it just drags that the entire side out. I can't grab it.
So you're grabbing in the slightly wrong spot. Because if we do this, it expands that.
No matter where in the general area, it doesn't pull anything else.
Yeah, I can also do this and make 2 viewports.
I did that. That's what I did.
So if you do that, or like when you did it first, when you get the double-headed arrow.
Yeah.
Sure how I made it disappear, but I didn't.
Yeah, so this is why you want to click around on Blender.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not. You're just clicking and dragging on that one side, right? You're not pressing the buttons. I'm not.
Oh, so I didn't click and drag on the side. I clicked and dragged right on the arrow. If you click and drag on the side, you get this.
Okay, it has to be on the arrow specifically.
Yes, it has to be precisely on the arrow because around the arrow is the widget. If you click and drag here, you're orbiting.
The icon doesn't change the exact same icon no matter where you're hovering in that area. So it's just
it changes up here. It changes when you get this part. But if you get this thing where you got multiple viewports,
How are you doing the multiple viewpoints?
I grabbed right in the corner that's where it goes to crosshairs. When the mouse goes to crosshairs, like right here.
Where's your?
Wait, my mouse isn't showing. Okay, if you go right up to the very corner, I don't know why it's not showing. It's not showing on the Zoom call. But see where my mouse is? See the corner I'm heading towards? Yeah, for some reason that's disappearing from the Zoom call. Sorry, I did not realize that at first. But it looks like crosshairs. Then you get this. If you you have the double-sided arrow, yeah, this one's showing up. If you right click and join areas, then you get this little arrow for which one's going to close. We won't really be able to tell, but the arrow points at the one that's going away. So I click here, and then that spreads over. Well, I guess here you can see they're two different angles. So I'll right click, right up with the double-headed arrow between them, and join areas, and send it this way, and we can see now back to just one window. We have lots and lots of different views.
How did you make it one window?
I just close those other ones. So put your mouse right in between them, right click and join areas, and then point towards the one you want to close.
Okay, and that's those two are technically the same environment.
Yes, yes.
So you just look at the object from two different angles at the same time.
Whoops.
Basically.
Yeah, and what I just did is problematic. I didn't mean to do that. So let me drag this back over. Then click on this one, and that notice that happens upward as well. Get rid of that. Let me go back to that corner and drag over, and now I'll go to add a cube, and that'll be our starting point. Notice how it added both of them. So you can zoom in on one, yeah. Look at different angles. We can have different perspectives. Maybe one of them could be wireframe, one of them could be rendering. See different versions of it. Any reason we might need the two different views. So I'm going to jump in here. So we could combine things. Let me do that real quick. I'm going to do something really quick and then undo it. Let me delete that cube. So maybe I'll do it with spheres. So let's add I'm going to undo this. So like add a sphere, mesh, another sphere. Get upward, S, and scale it down small. We're still in there. This way. That. 50. Bring that up here. And see how we can build up pieces for a character. Duplicate that. There. Duplicate that. Put there. We can build up the pieces, put those together. That might be a nice way to build an understanding of it. It's not the optimal way to do it because we have things inside of each other, hidden parts, and there's 5 different parts there. So that if we go to put a skeleton on that, there's like 5 different ones. So we would need to combine them into one thing, like we did with that SVG the other day. It works a lot. Some people might find that easier to start with. So optimally, though,
I was just about to say, when you join them into one object, isn't that just morph them together, or
they still remain exactly like they are. So Control J, I will do that. And if I zoom way in here, see how we can see the top of that leg inside of the other one. So it's going to process those vertices and faces and edges. Computer only needs 2. So if we know the vertices and faces, the edges are obvious. If we know the vertices and edges, then the faces are obvious. But the computer is going to have to process all of those along the way. We can do that. That would be a good start. That looks like a human thing. Give it a skeleton. Problem is well, one problem that would happen here is there's no bend point in the middle of those cylinders. Or you can kind of see how they're just straight up the edge. So there's no point for the muscles to bend there. So you'd want to add some creases in and stuff, but optimally we want to do it with one structure. So normally we'll like start with a cube. So add a cube. And then we just manipulate it into the shape we want by adding vertices, edges, and faces. Picture. We got a picture. So that's probably that human sketch. Okay. Here we go. So a lot of times we would use reference material like this. This one here, is probably for actual 3D modeling. We can take that picture. Whoops. Right click, save image as, stock photo, that'll work. Yeah, my grad studies this week, one of the questions on the homework still said to be determined. So I made a meme of the picture and made a meme of it's difficult to come up with questions because it's applied linear algebra. So there's all the other homework questions were basically just typesetting. It's awful typesetting. I get an hour to type the LaTeX. Obvious things, but it's a sorry, a little distraction. That was what was in there. So instead of doing this, we could add an image, so like a reference or a background image. So then we have this. Another one. I want background. And background, which I won't really do this anymore. Oh no, it's still not flat. And then we have this transform down, so I can change them. Let's say 0, 0, 0, and get the X. There we go. So then we put our cube in front of this, and manage cube. You might want to build to something like this. So scale it down, and I would do it with just actually I would take a step further. Edit mode. I would do here the Control R. Take just half the cube. So like we go wireframe and get rid of this half of the cube. And then just manipulate that with the picture behind until I get that shape from that. And notice how there's we really just need two, right? So like the front and the side. Set one up on this axis and the other one over here perpendicular to it. And then just keep manipulating that cube until we have like this shape. Front and side view, switching back and forth, adding vertices, moving them around, manipulating it until you get to a final image like that. Does the logic of that make sense? So come in here, go to edit mode, right, this, let's split this. We like wireframe is kind of can't select through the solid view. So like there, oops. Then I can select vertices up here, line those up there. Those two look like they should go around the leg. Then I can come up here, maybe
Is there?
grab that top face and extrude that up. And then oops. Over to represent the shoulder. And just move the vertices around very slowly. We're going to do something easier here in a moment. That's what you'll want to practice with. for it, but do those steps make sense? You see, I've got a reference picture. And what we're going to do for a quick version, you would want to do that. The reference picture allows you to do that much more precisely. We do another copy orthogonally, right, going that way. And then we could bring it in narrow, stretch it out for the shoulder blades, bring it for the neck, stretch out the nose on the side.
Is there like a mirror functioning or
Yes.
like a way to just
That's why I got rid of half of it. So then we'd come over here and yeah. And then that's it. That was a little bit off. It wasn't lined up perfectly. But that's the one where you spend a lot of time there. Logically, that makes sense. I see head nods here. Hopefully it's the same on Zoom call. That's what you want to practice and get a lot of time with, but you might want to get some just general practice with Blender first. So I'm going to go to object mode and delete that. So build up to that, but start with just maybe some random shapes. So let's add a cube.
Out of curiosity, what did you enter into that image?
I tried a couple things. Sketch of human body shape. Looks like the last thing I searched for. There's plenty of them out there, but if you have a character in mind, you'd probably draw your 2D character first. Okay, so now I've got a cube. Something I like to do. So this orange icon over here, the square with a hollow square on it, that's our transform data. So the cube is it says scale of 1 by 1 by 1. But I'm going to come over here and grab this measuring device. So here's a ruler. And if I measure this, notice we have a 2-meter cube. I got an angle. It is 2 by 2 by 2 cube. So it's actually 1 meter each direction from the origin. I'm going to push delete on that measuring on that ruler. So if we did any measurements and start adjusting things, it's all double when we start scaling it, right? So first thing I like to do is come over to the scale and change that to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Now it's a 1 by 1 by 1 meter cube. And this is what Control A does. What would normally be select all. So now if I bring my mouse back over to the viewport and push Control A, Control A, apply all transforms. This resets our data. So notice now it's 1 by 1 by 1. But if I was to like click on one of these axes here, so it looks straight on and don't get the weird measurement this time. Notice now it's a 1 meter cube. So that means if we wanted a 3 meter cube, if we wanted it 3 meters tall, we could just scale it 3 up. If we want, and you can get exact sizes that way. Try to go for exact sizes. The button that has all the shapes, there's your units. So if you would rather work in feet and inches, you can go with that. Try to get accurate sizes. When we get to Godot next week, all we have to do is tell Godot where Blender is, and it will automatically use any models we have. So you want to have your sizing accurate. Makes things a lot easier.
Make sure everything's proportional to each other.
And it took me a while to get that one figured out. So that's a useful tip. Scale it down by 50%, because almost all of our modeling software does that. It goes 1 meter each direction from the origin instead of a 1 meter cube. But now, and then apply that so that becomes the 100%. And then if you want something 3 meters tall, you just do 3 on the z-axis, 300%. If you want something half a meter tall, you do 0.5, which would be 5 centimeters. Y'all want to play around and do that. So what we want to do is turn this cube into like maybe a human shape. So Blender uses negative Y is forward, Z is up, and positive X would be to the left. Like if this direction is the character's forward, then this is the character's left, which right or stage left. But we'll go to edit this, we'll select it, and then go into edit mode. And this is how we do most of our modeling, at least the starting points, which y'all want to start getting practice with. There's definitely not enough vertices there to make anything, right? Oh, we could misshape our cube, but we don't have enough points in space to do anything. So I'm going to right click and subdivide that a lot.
Is there a way to enter?
So anytime we do something down in the lower left-hand corner, you will see a little menu pop up. It shows the last thing you did, and you can enter parameters here. So let's make a bunch. So I did 8, and that way it's 9 across, and that way there's a nice center row or something. That gives us a few more points to work with in space. We're not going to take time to do a perfect one, but we want something roughly human shaped. So I'm going to come back out here and go back to object mode. We'll have the arms and legs and everything coming off of this. So the origin there, I'm thinking that'll be the waist. How wide is a human in meters? Anybody know? Any thoughts? In feet? What are we about?
2 foot,
Like
a little
2,
bit.
3.
2 foot. So
What like 1.5, 2 foot, something like that.
okay, so a meter is just more than 3 foot. So maybe 0.6 on our X. So 0.6 sounds like a reasonable width for a human. How deep is a human? I call this the width, so then this way is the depth. That's a lot smaller, right? So if this is the front of the character over here, and this is the back, that's what's a good way to say it? That's like Santa Claus with a lot of depth. So
Typically like
that's the y-axis, so maybe 0.2.
maybe or something.
So does that look about proportional for a waist? That'd be kind of skinny. I guess we could go more than that. 0.3. We're Americans. We eat well. So the waist is about that wide and that thick. That seems reasonable, right? So the thinking ahead where this is going to be. So we're going to start with the waist of the character. So we set that up proportional. Now we can go in and back in edit mode and start going from there. So we know that's 1 meter high. So here we come that means we're 0.5 meter above the waist. The average person is 1.8 meters. So let's just round it to 2 to make it easy. A tall person, basketball player.
Or make it Minecraft
We're
Steve.
0.5 meter tall, so we need to come another 0.5 meter above up, right? So I want to select all of those top faces. So I'm going to click the Z, so I see just those, and then over here's the face select mode. I'm select all the top faces this way. Just draw a box around them. So notice when I was looking straight down, there's no way to select anything on the side. So I'm going to push E to extrude. I'll just bring it up a little bit. And I'm thinking the shoulders will be about another 0.7 above. So, or not 0.7, 0.4, because we need to come up another 0.5 meter. We go 1 meter above the waist and 1 meter below the waist. But we don't want to go the full meter because we still have the head to go. something like that. Just roughly thinking, and shoulders are going to be a little bit broader than the waist, right?
Mhm.
So I'm going to scale those out. So I'll push S for scale, and then X, because I only want to scale on the X-axis. I mean, just a rough idea of a character here. And all of these faces, which this is why I often use the other select tool. So I'm going to push W a couple times till I get the freeform selection here. What looks like a lasso. Because boxes, we have to adjust our view and change the angle. With the freeform selection, all it has to do is touch it. So if I just drag across there, I get all these here. So then I can extrude those. I'll extrude it straight out. And that's what's going to become the arm in a moment. Same thing over here. I'll grab all those, push E to extrude, and just kind of bring it straight out. And that's eventually going to be the arm. So you come down here to the bottom and look straight on from the bottom. That's the top. Okay, now I'm looking at the bottom. And let's see, I'll grab all of these over here. This is why I picked the number 8. So there's a spot in the middle specifically for these legs. Okay, not the perfect version, but that way it can get some symmetry. I'm going to select all of them like that. So everybody see how I selected that? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? For first try, just some random stuff. Then I'll come over here. I'll push E to extrude. Come down a little bit for the legs. This would be a good part to type in numbers, but we've already seen the type in numbers. So there's the upper leg. Then I'll push E to extrude again. And notice we got the upper leg and lower leg, and the only seam is right there at the knee. So now when we start to animate it, there's only one place that skin can move. With those still selected, I'll push.
Can you say what you were saying? What you said there again? Sorry, I was.
So when I extruded those down, I went for the upper leg and lower leg. So when we add a skeleton to it, the only place this has to move is that seam right there that would be like the knee.
Oh, so when you actually have a skeleton,
it can only move at those edges.
At those, okay.
It can only manipulate where the vertices are and stuff. So it can only move in that position we put on, which is another little challenge, little poly things. Yes.
So I was wondering because the way I used to model people, is there like a welding tool in this, if you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you were okay.
So most of your tools are another one that looks like a wrench.
I'm sorry, that welding tool?
It goes back into the multi-part. Yeah. A more complicated tool. But since he's seen it before. Yeah, it'll has a different name. What is the name? I guess I should look at that. Oh, it is Weld. Never mind. Weld has the same name as Maya. He's not the only one that went to Purdue recently too. It's all Maya. Or tried to do the game development at Purdue, but they do a lot on the very first day.
What does the weld thing do? Is that like combine two things or something?
Yeah. Yeah, more complicated than we need to worry today. So I need to select all these components again. So here, and whenever you select stuff, shift and do the adjacent selection here. Shift to do multiple selections. Spin it around. Make sure you don't have extra things selected. That'll work. I'll hit E to extrude out just for a little bit on the foot, because then I can come over and select these front faces here and extrude that out like the foot of a character. See how we just sort of manipulated that box to start looking like a character. out of just one show. The better one, the very time consuming one, would be what I pointed out earlier, have those pictures. So for the head, I'm just going to start to go with random here. I'll scrap stuff in the middle. Trying to clean that up so that I have like sort of a symmetric thing. That'll work. And again, once that's selected, I'll push E to extrude it. And I'm getting ready to undo something. We keep extruding, but there's also I for insert. So if I push I, notice how we drag out a secondary shape sort of there. And then that one goes like up and down. So then E is extrude and I is inset. So we could kind of make that hollow. I didn't have any plans for that, but those are the two you want to use most often. Extrude out a new shape or inset into a shape. So you push I, and then you'll like drag your selection smaller and sink it in. And whereas extrude out and inset in. But my plan here only had extrusion, so I just had to show that somewhere. So that's like the neck. So with that selected, I'm going to push S to scale. Whoops. Let's see. S and then maybe X first. So I'll scale it just along the X direction. So it looks more square-like, because the neck would really be round, but I'm going to go with square for now. Extrude it up for the neck. Extrude up another little piece, and then I'll scale it back out to make something of the head.
I was a bit behind with the neck thing. How did you get it? Was there anything special to get it to taper up like that? Or was
I extruded and then S to scale and shrink it down. I did restrict the scale to only the X-axis, but for now, just S to scale. And then if you want to only scale on one axis, you can push X, Y, or Z. That's also very important for rotation. We'll see that on the arms, because we don't want to just completely rotate freely when we get to the arms there in a moment.
So while you're extruding, you hit scale?
Oh, after the extrusion. So here, I'll do it on the next one too. So it's a whole lot of the same thing. So I'll push E to extrude and then bring this up. And there's like the lower part of the face. Okay, then I'll do this. I'll just keep that one straight up, then extrude out another one. And then I'll click to put that extrusion in place, and then S to scale it out just a little for like cheekbones. So E to extrude. Stretch it to where you want it. That one's probably good. I'll push E to extrude another little one. Click to put that in place, and then S to scale it down so it like smooths out the top of the head. E to extrude. X to scale that down so that it starts to get the basic shape of a thing. Again, I've had decades of practice at this. First time I saw 3D modeling was right after the first Jurassic Park movie came out. Long, long before most of y'all were born. It was only available in wireframe option at the time. Computers couldn't handle all the faces and stuff. Unless you had super nice computers like what Steven Spielberg used on Jurassic Park. So a bunch of extruding and scaling to get that far. I can do the same thing on the arms. So I'll select this one. And to make this arm, I'm going to push E to extrude it. But then it's kind of at the wrong angle. So I'm going to push R. And if you just push R, it rotates freely. And push Y so I can only rotate around the Y axis. Actually, I'm going to undo that extrusion. Unselect those faces. These faces here. That probably came out a little bit too far. And move them back in. There we go. And then we can push R, Y, and start to rotate that. E to extrude out a little ways. R to rotate. And then Y for the Y axis. So extrusion is like locating that spot we're worried about, right? or just moving back and forth. But a whole lot of scaling and rotating. Those things we saw are transformed out again, which I'll do again. I'll scale that down because arms get smaller. Then E to extrude, come down to about where the elbow would be. R, Y, rotate only around the Y axis. I guess S to scale it down because our arms get smaller there. E to extrude out a forearm. That angle looks good, so I'll do S to scale it down for the wrist. E, I'll just come out a little bit and scale that up for the bottom of the hand. Whoops. E, extrude that out, and then that'll eventually become the hand. Right, not the fine details here, just a rough shape. That's where you're going to want to start getting your practice at with the other arm here. So select all of that, move it in so it doesn't come out so far. And R to rotate and Y so that it can only rotate around the Y axis. E, extrude a piece out. R to rotate, Y, so only on the Y axis. That looks about like what I did on the other arm. This is where mirroring is really handy because arms will be.
Yeah.
Usually we only draw half a human and then symmetric, but this is start with this just to get practice because you're all going to get some practice moving those vertices, edges, and faces around in space. So I'll scale that down a little. E, extrude out the next piece. R, pi, rotate that around. We bring that in because the angle's starting to look weird. Then S to scale it down. So extrude out something and then adjust the transform of that thing. It's that transform data that we keep coming back to over and over and over and over again. E, extrude out a forearm. S, scale that down for the wrist. E, just a little bitty one. S, scale that back out for the hand. And E, extrude that again. Okay, so not perfect. I have human shapes as a script. I did it so many times I eventually just
Screw it, I don't want to keep doing this.
yes. I just wrote a script that described all the vertices. Once I spent a lot of time getting with like that thing I showed earlier with reference pictures. I did 3, back, side, and top, and spent a long time getting the exact one I wanted, and then just wrote a script that grabbed all the points of all those vertices, and then it just recreates that. Last summer, I had it close to it finally, which is a really nice adjustment because now it's not naked characters. Yeah, it always looked weird if I had accidentally clicked on a color that looked like flesh color on it. Like, oh, whoops. So now the character, but it can be done as a script. Does that make sense? I don't know, edge selection, but maybe vertices. And we can add more vertices in to round that off more. Come down to the hands, add a bunch of vertices in to define what the fingers are and the joints in the fingers. You just want to get edges, vertices, edges, and faces, and just manipulate it till you get the shape you want. That'll make a good one for our purposes here. And so that we don't really spend. Yeah, it can be very time consuming. So I want to make sure there's plenty of time to spend on it. And we need to give this a skeleton, right? So we can animate. So I'm going to come to object mode and probably hit save. Remember to save your work on. Let's call this character. It's fine. Zoom thumbnail so I can't see what I'm typing. Character. Save that. And then just like we saw with the 2D stuff, we'll give it a skeleton. And then that becomes the skin for our skeleton, because then we can go through and give it colors. Right? We saw the little, I think it looks like a beach ball. create a new material, and I don't know, for a game, like a red plastic piece, and then render it. Zoom things are getting in the way. Give it a material. I'm just going to leave it in the regular view. When we go back to edit mode, because I showed this, we can make individual materials. We hit the little plus sign to make a new material. Little plus sign, make a new material, and maybe this one will be blue. We could select a bunch of these, like select all of these. Oh, whoops. Right, face select. Select all these faces. To select all the faces, you would select all the vertices around them. And then with that material selected, we can hit assign and then give each little block its own color. Ultimately, to give things their own color, what we do is come over to this UV editing and we unwrap it. So notice this tab has two things. So if I select everything here, we have it shows this big grid, everything's evenly spaced. Right click and click select everything and you and see how it gives us a flat surface of this view. For you, there we go. Now all of those faces that we use to make this character are hopefully distinguishable, and then we can move that over to like a paint program to Photoshop and color in each face exactly the way we want. That's how you get to photorealism. That takes a long. So yeah, there's the in the skins, all the stuff there. Just pointing the buttons. You want to click around for now. Start with just putting your character together. Assign some colors. Just start playing around with it, and do that. Don't try to jump too far ahead. Start simple and build up to it. Your character might not look quite the same as mine. I've been doing this longer than most of y'all have been alive. So, and it is one of my favorite things to do. So, like when I'm bored, that's what I do. I sit down and do 3D modeling, not like this. Most recently, or procedural things. So, like waves crashing on a beach that are photorealistic. It was painful for my cheap computer to try to do that, but a 3x3 meter, a 3 meter cube square of it looked really awesome. Cobblestone streets did those recently. Those look awesome. Made some log cabins recently that I had to make a new noise texture for. So I actually had to go in and make a new noise generator because none of the ones that were available. I've been doing this for a very long time. So I'm going to go just randomized colors, kind of sure where those were. So to animate it, we give it a skeleton. So we go add, make sure you're and okay. You can also go to like sculpt mode here. I select it. I guess this is an important point of photorealism as well. We can go to sculpt mode, and then it's like we have chisels working in clay. But again, that takes a while. Not as long as the unwrapping, but we're in object mode. So if we add an armature, that gives us our first bone, which is actually inside our character now, so we can't see it. But if we select it over here, right, we have the just hierarchy list over in the side where we can select it. We can select it, and then we'll see these green menus. One's a stick man, the other one's a bone. If you click on the stick man under viewport display, there's a little checkbox that says in front. So that way it always shows. So it's still inside our character. Notice that the spin all the way around, it is completely inside that character. But it's it shows through the skin. Makes it a lot easier. And right above that, if you want different shapes, so like a little stick, if that's getting in the way, an envelope, you can use different shapes to see things. I'm going to keep it with that pointed one. Because one thing, the orientation of the bones affect which the way it points. Since we have a pointed one here, that can't make a difference in the long run. Not on anything we would do today, but
Where was the make the armature visible always thing?
so select the armature, you probably need to use the hierarchy. Then that'll give you these two green buttons. Those refer to the armature. The one that looks like a stick man. And expand viewport display. You'll see checkbox for in front.
Thank you.
And now we want to turn that one bone into a skeleton. So same way we did the other one. So I'm going to go with the bone selected, go to edit mode. And that looks a little bit tall to be the backbone. I guess in this case, I like it. It'd probably be okay in the center there. That'll be fine. I like to go highlight the move tool. Really could use any of them, the scale or the circle tool. It gives us a nice reference on what's going on there. But the move tool, I usually keep that highlighted and then I can move that down. And then use S and R to scale and rotate. And there's all the transforms really, really quick. Plus the arrows give us a much clearer indication of what's highlighted than just a little bit of orange. So I'm gonna move that down. Shoulders would be. And I'm going to extrude a bone, E to extrude, and then make one for the neck. Then E to extrude, and another one for the head. And then just like we saw with the other stuff, just move it into position. And I would highly, highly recommend don't grab the little white spot in the middle where you can move all three dimensions at once. Just take your time and always move in one direction at a time. Get the y-axis where you want it. And then get the x-axis where you want it. Now I'll come back to the shoulder. E to extrude and bring out like the left shoulder or right shoulder, whatever side that is. Then E to extrude the upper arm, E to extrude the lower arm, which is really, really long, and E to extrude one bone for the hand. So kind of give each one its own section. Here's where that in front kind of becomes problematic because it looks like it almost filled that in. And grab the little knobs between the bones and adjust them to where you want them to be, where it looks like that bone is next to the skin that it's going to affect. At this point, does it already seem like the skeleton on 3D is easier than the skeleton on 2D? Hopefully it does. But I figured this is the one we want, so that's probably the reiterative. I want to do that's why I chose to do the hard one first. Now we can do the other arm. E to extrude like a shoulder. E to extrude a upper arm. E to extrude a forearm, then E to extrude a hand. That'll be enough for this, but it looks like I got way off on the positioning. So grab them and move forward so that they're at the right, so that the bones are inside the skin. Very, very bad thing when bones are outside the skin, right?
I found that when I was using X or whatever, would keep it in line with the others, and then I just use the move arrows to bend that bone where I wanted to rest.
Yeah, that's definitely my recommendations. Don't try to do a lot at once. Do lots. Well, it's a computer. Do lots of small things, not one big thing. Lots of easy things is easier than lots of big things. So I can go back here. This one I'm just going to move down to about where like the pelvis area would be. That'll be good for this character. Then I'll push E and extrude one out for the right hip. I'm going to shift and middle mouse click to move that up. Then I'll push E and extrude out for the upper leg. E extrude out for the lower leg. And I'll do E and extrude one out for the foot. Back up to, I guess, the pelvis area. E to extrude. E to extrude the upper leg, lower leg. Move that down a little more. And E and extrude out some sort of foot. And make sure they all seem to be in about the right position. Those feet are not. Again. Take your time with it and just get each one right in place. I think that's about where the knees are. It might be a little bit below it. Some uncertain way there. I'll put that ball from the knee joint right about where that crease is. So when you start moving it, moves in the spot. There's a lot of changing views back and forth, all of that stuff. I'm going to go with that, and we can make this character move or walk or whatever we want. So I'll hit save. It's always a good idea to save your progress. When you're first learning, it might be a better idea to save as and then get a copy so you can get back to the old version. Hopefully everybody's probably aware of that, right? Oh, y'all are all gamers. You know about saving different versions. Save a different version, and then you don't mess anything up on your way through. Or you learn what to do and then come back to the last spot that worked well. So now we have a skin and a skeleton. We need to put those together. Does anybody remember which order we need to select them in? From last Wednesday. So, because order does matter. I'll give you 2 seconds. I don't expect you to memorize this. This is something that will be necessary. This is not something you're getting tested on this time. You get extra credit for this. So there's extra points for this, but there's no penalty for this. But if you're heading into game development, you kind of need to know this. So when we do multiple selections, the last thing selected is the menu we see. So we want to make the skin the parent of the skeleton. Or if you can't remember, there's only 2 things to select. Let's just randomly try it. Let's do it this way. Let's go back to object mode. So which way do we need to select? So let's try a skeleton, hold shift, then skin. And if we push Control P, we get a short menu. There's just make it a parent, and there's this menu. Let's check the other one. If we check, so that was the skin menu. If we select the skin first, then hold shift and get the skeleton. If we hit Control P, we get a longer menu with information about deforming. The skin cannot deform the skeleton. So this is the one we want. We want the skeleton to be able to deform the skin. And here, automatic weights usually works great. Go to automatic weights. Notice over here in the hierarchy that skin, which was just called cubed, is a child. We have to expand the skeleton in order to see it. So it gave us that parent-child relationship. I'm going to select the skeleton, hold shift, and go to the skin. And we saw weight painting the other day. So as we select the bone, select shift, select the foot, there's what skin is affected by that foot. That looks pretty accurate, right? Looks like the right skin. So shift, select the upper arm. You'd want to go through this way, add some paint. Remember, weight of 1 adds weight, and weight of 0 is your eraser. So it's not like we don't have 2 different tools. It's like we have 1 pencil, 0 erases, and 1 adds, 100% adds. the radius of how big it is. If it's doing too much, you can adjust the string. Lots of that, and you'd want to go through and check each one. Alternatively, you can just select the skeleton, because the skeleton is what has pose mode, and go move the bones you care about. So here's the upper arm. So if I push R, X, so rotate only around the X axis. Oh wait, I have multiple. Like just this bone, then RX looks like that arm's moving correctly. RY, that'll work. You just want to check each of the bones you can. Alt R resets. So push A to select all of them, and then Alt R, Option R if you're on a Mac, will reset back to the original pose. So you can always get back to the original pose. Maybe the forearm here, if we grab that and push R to rotate around the X, because our bones mostly only rotate, right? I can't move this bone independently, anything other than rotating it. Or if I did, I would be screaming in pain, not standing here lecturing. Okay. We're kind of restricted in that way. So make sure the ones you want can move correctly. Rotate the legs, upper leg, lower leg, and then that old saying, right? That old song we learned in kindergarten. If bones connected to the leg bone, all the bones are connected. So it follows through. So you want to think and plan and get used to that. As you get your practice, also pay attention to the order in case you need to change that for the next time around. The improvement. That looks good. So all those seem good. I'm going to go back to object mode. Hit Control F again to save. And then up here in the menu, we have this animation tab, which that stuff we started looking at earlier. Oh, I know why my mouse keeps disappearing in that spot, because the zoom buttons are popping up there and disappearing. So it's the zoom button, the buttons are messing that up. That's why I couldn't highlight the crosshairs earlier. But I'm hovering over that tab that says animation. It's very near where my mouse is on the screen. You go to animation. Here's somebody already preset those up, because wherever we're at, so like maybe up here, I'll do it. Over here in the hierarchy, I can change what I'm looking at. So notice we have different, those two, there's two buttons on each one. So I can switch this to a timeline, or back to the outline, what it's called. So we have control over them. So all those tabs up at the top are just some that are already preset up for certain tools, like animation, where we have one set in pose mode, because that's what we want to do with our animation. And we have one over in preview mode, so we can see those movements without all the other stuff getting in the way. Down at the bottom, we have the dope sheet. Since we're all going into games, I'm going to say right now, switch that to action editor. Notice we have a new button and like a drop down menu. So I click new. We're going to make a wave, but we might also want to run and a jump and an idle, and we have lots of animations on this model. So Blender is set up for movies. So switch from a single dope sheet to an action editor.
Real quick, how do you color individual sections of the?
So you do that in edit mode. So select your skin in edit mode. Make sure you're in the preview where you can see the colors. And then you'll select like the one face you want, or how many faces you want. Like all the faces, get that face. Then on your material, a plus sign if you need a new material, or just select the one you want from there if you already have it. And just create the material that way. And then hit the button that says assign. Assign? Yeah, so select the material and hit assign. Okay. Now I'll go back over to the animation tab. Maybe I'll put this one
the face selected, it's coloring the entire body.
You have to be in edit mode. You're in edit mode or object mode.
I'm in edit
I was selecting my faces, so what it could be, if you're selecting my vertices,
I'm also selecting my face. I was just trying to color specific parts to make it easier for doing the skeleton stuff, but it just did the entire body. It's one thing. And I
you
was
must
trying
have
to
had the
make-
whole body selected.
like exactly what you're doing here. I only selected a certain face, and that's the only thing that was glowing when I was selecting it, but it was still changing the color of the entire body. Is it not base color that you're changing?
Oh, I made a new material. So you have to make multiple materials.
So yeah, so the first material will always be the whole thing, and you have to make another
Mhm.
material. Okay.
Okay. So now we can do this animation. Let's just do a quick one real quick. So basically, remember we do the keyframe, the important frames, and the computer fills in the gaps. So I'm gonna do the original pose here for the first one. Well, I need to make a new. Well, it's on the list. So I'm gonna click wave. Notice how I tried to delete that? It will try to optimize things out. So there's this little shield here. It looks like a shield to me. That's why I think of that icon. It says fake user right next to the new button. If you click that, it won't try to optimize the animation out of your model. But you want to give everything a fake user or push down. But we'll see this push down later. So I'm going to use the rest pose as the starting spot. So up here, switch this, select the skeleton, then switch this to pose mode. I'll push A to select all the bones, then I to insert a keyframe on those transformations. So location, rotation, and scale. I'm just going to wave. So down here at the bottom right, let's say 20 frames. That's probably a good long waving. 20 frames at 60 a second. That's a third of a second waving. Maybe longer. It's probably moving slower than that. We have control over you. Then I'm going to come to frame 21. One frame past where we loop backwards. I'll put the same keyframes in. So A to select all the bones, then I to insert the keyframes with all three parts of transform data. And I went one past the loop so that it moves smoothly. Then I'll just come a couple frames over. So like 4, that'll work. On frame 4, I'll rotate this bone up a little. Rotate this bone up a little. Then I'll grab this bone. Rotate this until it looks like something that could be a somewhat natural movement. She's like lifting his arm up, something like that. That'll work. I'll hit A to select all the bones again. Then I to insert a keyframe. I'll come a few more over, so like 8 or so. This bone, rotate that up even further. So that's a small movement for that bone, but it moved the hand along. And then we're starting the leg. So here. A, select all the bones, insert a keyframe. Come a couple frames over. I'll keep this one. Move this. Select all the bones, insert a keyframe. Come back instead of going finishing the wave so soon. Okay, so we just put the bone into bones we want into position, and then insert a keyframe, and the computer should fill in the gaps in between. Yeah, that's a weird wave. I got an extra little twist in there somewhere, but that's the process. So if we wanted it to walk, right? I'll duplicate this really quick because I've done a lot of walks. So that looks good. So I'm gonna make a new one. New button. Looks like the copy button. Hit that for like a new one. Call this walk. I'll just do this one really quick. We saw earlier A to select all the bones, then Alt R goes back to our original position. So wave is still up like that. Walk, I haven't saved anything yet. A, then Alt R to reset all of them. And we can come down here to the dope sheet area and right click and delete keyframes. This is something we have to do sometimes. We'll have to get soon. Okay. Right click on the dope sheet and delete keyframes. Notice what happens. That's all the keyframes. So whenever you go to clear something, so wave is still there, but walk has nothing. I'm click the little shield for a fake user. Then maybe move this back to the beginning. Now I'll save some walking things. So like walking, maybe rotate this leg back, then the knee. If that leg's back, then this forward, rotate those. Here, rotate that, the knee. If that leg is forward, then this arm is backwards. Yeah. So move to frame one. Select all this, insert a keyframe, location, rotation, scale. I'll come one past it. Insert the same keyframe there. And in the middle, we'd be in the opposite position, right? So I'll come about halfway. Then push Alt R to reset it here at frame number 7 and go the opposite way. So this time I'll have the player's left leg moves forward, upper leg forward, out a little. So we got twisted. Right leg backward, then the knee. One leg forward, the other backwards. He's gonna kind of hobble here. And if the left leg is forward, then the left arm needs to be backwards. Right leg is forward, right leg is back, so the right arm needs to be forward. If we're walking, our arms and legs go in different directions, and if we're running, they're the same. That's how it's so right. It's so obvious when somebody's running or doing a running motion at a walking speed, because we don't counterbalance with we accentuate the momentum with arms, we counterbalance. But I'll insert a keyframe there. Ooh. And now, as you can tell, I've done a walking animation or two. What is this, 2023? 31 years. I've done a walking animation or two. 3 keyframes, and there's the walk. Obviously, then we can come back and add details to the character. Right? It's still editable. We can go back and add details now that the skeleton is moving in the right way, and keep getting better and better and better as it goes along. Very, very time consuming. This is the one that you're going to want to spend some time with, because then, like we saw the other day, I'll just use the walking one. We go ahead and save this. Stop that. Notice it's set to walk. Make sure everything has a fake user. Yeah. Notice it is walking. It's doing that last animation because we have a timeline down here. If we stretch it up a little bit, see all our keyframes. That waving was now. You don't have to do this part. I'm going to go very quickly. The stuff we saw the other day. A camera. I said, put it at the origin. So move that camera. Why is it locked in? Not locked in. Camera. Deselect everything. Why is it not letting me move that? That's what it was doing the other day.
When you're, are you sure it looks like you're highlighting or trying to highlight whenever you're looking around.
I'm trying to drag the little arrow.
I was saying that it's making the dotted lines like you're trying to select something. You have the wrong tool selected, or
It's the move tool. I guess it's just determined to make that a child picture for some reason. I don't know why it's doing that. That's new. I'm thinking that's a glitch in Blender 3.6, but as popular as Blender is, they surely did that on purpose. But I don't know what it is because I don't want a third person game. I don't. Yes. So I'm just going to type the numbers in. So let's.
I don't know, because when I was messing around with it the other day, and you were still having an issue. It moved it just now. I didn't care. So I don't know what's up with yours.
Yeah. Let me delete that camera. Deselect everything. I'll put a camera in over here. Now, if I select it. No, I don't know why that's not letting.
Yeah, I just put a camera in.
Oh, G works. Oh, yeah, I hadn't done that. R for rotate, S for scale. G is grab, so you can get the transform. So the hotkey works. So if I do RZ, rotate around Z axis and point like that. Switch to looking at way too close to the character. So G, move back. G up, down, view, camera back to camera. I'll just look this way. No. And notice we don't have these things over here that look like spots to type numbers. Those are also sliders. Those are like sliders, sliders, typing spot combined. So you can just click your mouse and drag down the numbers there. That looks like a good view. I'll come in here under the menu that looks like a camera and go down to film and set it to transparent. Then on output, 10 folders fine. Yeah, I deleted the one from the other day. I'll just send it to, I'll just leave it all these. We saw that the other day. But now I can come up here and render that, render the animation. And now there's a 2D animation. A lot of people find that easier. Oh, I didn't put light on it or anything. That is. Let me try that again with some light. And
Your screen was also very zoomed in. Looked like you're just on torso too. So.
it was zoomed in. So, okay, X. Because here's the, in the preview mode, we can see it's working correctly. So I think it's just zoomed in. Maybe it's not. Where's my tempo? Oh yeah, it's not zoomed in. That's just a preview of it. So there's all the images for a 2D animation. So maybe we can use that when we go through some classic game in Game Maker. Which one would have a character? We'll figure out something to do with that character then in Game Maker on Tuesday. But that's something you'll want to get to practice with. Wednesday, yes. Thank you. Close that. Probably want to change that output to someplace reasonable, but or put it there and then copy and paste it to someplace useful afterwards. So there's the 3D modeling animation, quick pass at it. I do not expect you to have it at this point, but you will want to start and get practice at it. There's no penalty for it, but there's extra credit for it. It's going to be important for game developers. Got 30 minutes left today, so you get some practice on it there. It's installed on these machines, but we did a lot of stuff today, so relaxation can be good too after.
What's the extra credit thing exactly?
Extra credit for 2D and 3D animations.
Oh, just turning in a.
Yes, I think I said the wrong gate. It was in module 3. There's extra credit for some graphics. So it's your own animation. You'll see it there. It's due by the end of the semester.
Okay.
So it has the wrong date, but it's in module 3, and I think it has module 3 due date. It's not due today. Extra credit, you have plenty of time to do. Does anybody have any questions about that model stuff or the things we talked about earlier? Big thing with what we were talking about earlier, though, is into that critical thinking. Right? This is someplace where there is no right or wrong answer. It's thinking really, really hard on the thing to do. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm always happy to help. Otherwise, I'll see you all on Wednesday, and we will try to very quickly recreate a classic game. Like 70s arcades, like 83 at the latest. Because we have to do it in 2 hours. So I'll see you all Wednesday.